Hello, hello. My name's David, and what I have here is basically a recording from a call I did for a buddy of mine. He ran the Keynote Body sales teams. If you know who he is, his name's Bridger Rogers. But he runs a sales training program, and he asked me to do a guest call for him. So, in this call, I'm basically going through details of how I do my discovery process, how I'm uncovering pain, and basically just improving my close rate. So, this is gonna be raw, uncut, no fancy edits, and just posting this for value. So. No retention editing in here, but I hope you guys get some value from it. And if you do, drop a comment below, leave a like. And yeah, I'll be posting more like this. All right, enjoy.
Recorded.
Guys, I've got a special guest coming on today.
David.
The man, Davey Wayne. This guy's a gangster. This guy's a freaking certified $30,000 a month. You're still 20, right? Or are you 21? Oh, shoot, you're muted. Hold on. Let's get him off mute. 20?
Yeah, still 20, yeah.
When's your birthday, dude? I got to write this down.
January 28th.
Okay, I haven't missed it yet, bro. Okay, good. I'm not an asshole yet.
Yeah.
So, dude, I'm hiring an assistant to basically make sure I'm not an asshole. She's going to put all my, she's going to send out cards and everything, prove everything, gifts, so I can take all my ideas, gift giving, and put it in audio. Hey, I want you to send this to her. Hey, I want you to do this. In fact, let me do this right now. Hold on. Let me show you how it's done.
You gonna get me a Rolex for my birthday?
Give you a Rolex? Dude, maybe. Hey, what's up, Ari? I want to get a book sent out to Shelby along with a card. Let's coordinate on this Monday to get sent out. We'll talk soon. Cheers.
Sid, it's good to see you again, bro.
Dude, good to see you too, man. Oh, you remember Sid?
Yeah, dude.
How's it going?
One of the first people we brought in back when.
Yes, well, dude, thank you for setting me, by the way.
Yeah, bro. I got you. Nasty set process we put in place, huh?
Yeah.
It was good.
You've been ripping closes?
Not closing yet. I'm yet a setter, but I'm gonna be promoted soon, is what I've been told, to a closer.
Nice.
So,
That's awesome, dude.
yeah.
Well, cool. I mean, Bridger, how do you like to structure these? Because I did some calls early on, but I just basically have a relatively simple presentation, but I think it'll be useful for you guys. And then, I'm happy to do Q&A from there if that sounds good.
Yeah, dude, let it rip. I'll probably stop and ask you some questions. But yeah, the floor is yours, my man.
Awesome. All right. Is everybody here more of like is everybody setters right now, or are some of you guys closers, or where are you guys at? Just so I know kind of what skill level we're working with.
Setting right now.
Cold caller.
Cold calling?
Setting.
Setting. Parsa's
Okay.
joining. He's a closer, but everyone else is mainly setting. So, but these guys will eventually be closers. So if you teach them anything closing wise, they can pocket the information for a later date because that's all their vision. But I'll let you rip.
Totally. All right, cool. So I got a Google Doc because that's how you got to present. But I'm basically going to be going through stuff that's useful for the discovery process. So for anybody that doesn't know, general structure of a call is you've got the frame set at the beginning, you've got the discovery where you're asking the questions, you're gathering intel, you're also kind of teeing that person off for a close. And then you go into the presentation, the close, and then objection handling, right? And a lot of the sale ends up happening in the discovery because that's where it's sort of the concept of like everything you say is BS, everything I say is true, right? Like whatever you tell yourself, you're gonna believe. And so you want to get the person to kind of reveal to themselves what they need, what they want, all of those details. And then from there, you make things a lot easier on yourself when you actually do the presentation, right? You can tie your presentation back to things personal to them. So I have a process I follow. And an issue I'll see that a lot of closers end up having is they'll know what to say, but they won't know why they say it, right? So you've got a script, you can memorize the script, which you definitely should do. But what will end up happening is you don't really know what you're trying to get when you ask the question, right? Something I'll see very, very often. So they'll ask the question, they'll get a response, they'll be like, well, that's probably good enough. Or they'll be like, I don't know if I need to dig deeper on that. And so they'll just move on and they'll be missing valuable intel. So what I did is I kind of was doing this naturally. This was one of the things that made me a pretty naturally good closer from when I started. But I ended up putting it down on paper. And so every single time I take a call now, I actually have I have a Kindle Scribe. You can use paper if you want to. And I've got all of this stuff laid out on that writing surface, and I'll basically fill in the blanks, right? It just helps. I like holding something when I'm taking calls, and it helps me kind of make sure I'm getting all the information I need. But in essence, what you're trying to get when you're doing that discovery process is two main problems, and then those problems are made up of what I call a what, a why, a why-to, and then the consequence, right? So to break this down, the what is basically what does your product actually give them, or the overarching outcome, right?
Right.
So when you first hop on a call, basically after that sort of quick rapport stage, the first thing you should be trying to get is like, what do they want from your product? So for example, B2B funding, which is what I've been focused on right now. It's like, what are you trying to do with the funding, right? I'm trying to expand my business, right? Okay, that's all I need for the what. It's that sort of surface level thing that they're trying to get. Now, quick disclaimer here. If they say like, what do you want from this call? I want to become a closer, right? If you're selling sales training, I want to get funding. If you sell funding, that's not a good enough answer. It's what do they want through your product, right? So, yeah, I want to make more money, like through becoming a closer. That's a valid answer for the what. Or I want to be able to expand my business through the funding. That's a valid response for the what. So this is the first thing that you're getting on the call, and this is kind of what they're shooting. Everybody hanging with me so far? Does that all make sense? Cool. So basically what you've got then is you're going to start plugging this stuff in. So now that you've gotten the what, you've basically identified the core of problem one, right? They can't expand their business without getting funding because, and then you're going to find this in the problem section, whatever's actually keeping them from actually hitting their goal, right? So this is the first thing. This is the core problem. Then you're going to go through, the order you do discovery, that's kind of up to you. And I'll go through my order at the end. But next thing you're going to find is you're going to find their why. So the why is one step deeper. The why is basically what the what gives you. So I know that sounds kind of redundant, but for example, let's say you sell an Airbnb arbitrage biz op, right? Something that teaches people how to run an Airbnb business and make money with that. Yeah, man. So like, what are you looking to kind of get out of this call today? Yeah, well, I'm looking to start an Airbnb business. Okay, cool. And with starting that business, like, what were you hoping to do with that? Yeah, well, I'm kind of hoping to replace my income with this Airbnb business, right? Okay, so replacing their income is their why. The why is going to be what does replacing their income with the Airbnb business allow them to do, right? So then you can start to dig into that. This is going to be a little bit later in the call, right? Is it that their current income isn't enough and they're not able to do the things they like? Is it that their current job keeps them stuck in one location, right? Is it that they hate being controlled by a boss, right? The why is basically what they're enabled to do through the transformation your product gives, right? So another example with B2B funding, expanding the business is a really common thing I'll get, right? And I'll then ask like, okay, like with expanding the business, like what are you looking to kind of do from there? Like what's the vision? The vision is that I can, by expanding the business, I can start to place people in there and I can start to move myself out of the day-to-day, right? So that's their why. Their why for getting funding is that they really want to be able to move themselves out of the day-to-day, and the funding is a barrier to getting there, right? So then that gives us problem two. For example, with the funding thing, they can't move out of the day-to-day without expanding the business because, again, constraints of their current situation, right? Then the last thing is the why to, and I just call it this because what, why, and then there's really not another another thing I can add there. So it's why to. This is the sort of deeper personal desire, right? This is sort of, you need to be in pretty solid rapport before you start to dig into this. But this is what's enabled by the transformation, right? So for example, the what? Expand the business to a new sector, right? the why is once things are expanded, they can get out of the day-to-day tasks, right? Then the why too would be what's enabled from there, right? By getting out of the day-to-day tasks, what does that allow them to do, right? This is where you're starting to get into the more personal territory, right? Oh, well, once I'm out of the day-to-day tasks, I can start to spend more time with my family, right? Once I'm out of the day-to-day tasks, I can focus on launching this new venture that I'm more passionate about, right? Everybody has a reason. Now, something that you'll often get is like, once you're maybe like a make more money thing, that like it'll enable me to replace my income. Like, what are you going to do once you've replaced your income? Oh, I'm going to invest more. Like, that's a boring answer. You always want to get the like thing that they actually want, right? There's always something, there's always a picture in the back of their mind that after I get this product and I solve this problem, here's where my life is going to be at, right? And so maybe once they're out of the day-to-day tasks, this is a really common one for a lot of these older guys that want funding for their businesses. It's like spend more time with their family, right? So this all plugs in, right? So the what goes here. Without your service, like this would be funding, your Airbnb arbitrage training, your closer placement service, whatever, because constraint. This is going to be in the problem section. So this is whatever the actual barrier is that's kept them from being able to do that, right? So let's say it's the Airbnb business one, right? What's kept them from being able to replace their current income? Well, I lack the skills. I don't know where to start, right? That's an example of the constraint, right? Problem two, they can't they can't make 10K a month remotely without transitioning out of their current job because they're required to go into the office 5 days a week, right? Constraint of their current situation, right? So once you've gotten these two problems, you've gotten all these sort of fill in the blanks for those problems. This is the core of what you need in your discovery. So I've been able to, when I've been tight on time, if someone's been late to a call, right? If it's not a situation where I'm going to just rebook them, I really need to rip through that call quickly. What I'll do is I'll front load and I'll do a 5-minute discovery, right? I really kind of go straight for the jugular and I skip the sort of looser questions and I kind of go right for this stuff. Once I've gotten this information, I know I've got enough to grip that I can get the close. And then I'll put a little bit more weight on the objection handling. That's just like an example of where this becomes useful because I understand what I'm trying to get out of the discovery. It doesn't matter what words I use to get it, right? You're going to have a script. That's kind of the perfect way to get all the answers you want. But this is the core and why you're doing the discovery. The last thing, and this is a pretty key aspect, especially if you follow like a more NEPQ methodology, which is Jeremy Miner's training. It's basically consequence, right? So the theory here is urgency is one of the hardest things to get in a sale, right? Especially with something where it doesn't feel like it's an issue if I do this, a week from now or tomorrow, right? Like, why not put this off? It's really hard to add this external urgency in a lot of situations because people can kind of tell it's like fake. Like, an example of external urgency, we might be filled up tomorrow if you don't join today. Or we'll do it for 5K if you join today, but it will be 7K if you don't. That stuff can be beneficial, but the problem is sometimes people will kind of call your bluff. They're like, look, if you're telling me that if I come to you tomorrow with my credit card and say, let's do it for 5K, you're not going to take me in, like they're like BS. And they might just want to kind of test you, right? So what consequence questions does is it causes internal urgency, right? It's not urgency that you forced upon them. It's urgency that they're realizing they have, right? An example, let's say with the example of this business funding, right? They want to get the funding so they can expand their business to a new sector so that they can get out of the day-to-day tasks so they can spend more time with their family, right? What happens if they don't do that transition, right? Here's an example of how you kind of get the consequence. Okay, how long have you been, stuck in the day-to-day? 5 years. Okay, and why is that? Well, because I don't have enough cash flow to allow myself to outsource. Okay, so an example of consequence is like, well, tell me, like, what happens if you don't get this funding and you don't get out of the day-to-day and you stay stuck in it for another 5 years like you have for the last 5, right? That's where the wheels start to get spinning. Now, with a consequence question, sometimes what most people will say is like, no, that won't happen. That won't happen. Yeah, but I guess I want to understand because, it's been 5 years now that you've been in that situation. So what happens if that continues to go on, right? Like sometimes you need to push a little bit, but you've gotten the consequence when you get the sort of contemplative, that sort of sigh on the other end of the phone, and they're like, well, it's not good, man, right? That's when you've gotten the consequence and that's hit, and they've got urgency. Once you've gotten that consequence question in, that happened to me when I got set. Yep, we did do that. Yeah, anyways, that consequence, it's like you get that contemplative sigh and then you're like, damn it, like I really can't continue to push this off. That's when you've got urgency. And from there, you really want to ride that wave, right? Because now the person's like, fuck, I gotta change something. Like it's time to take action here. That's why I keep my pitch relatively short. I don't front load in my pitch. I like to keep it general so I can save some stuff for objection handling. I take them through it and then I get buy-in, right? I'm like, oh man, so based off of everything I showed you, do you feel like this will actually do the trick for you and get you the funding you need to be able to scale the business? Yeah, I do. Okay, got it. What specifically about the program do you feel like is kind of
That's
the best?
huge. Yeah. How important do you feel like the tie down? You do that after the pitch, correct?
Yep.
Yeah. So how important do you think that is before dropping the price to minimize objections?
Probably one of the single most important things. And I also every single time I use that when objection handling, right? For example, yeah, it sounds great, David. Let me go think about it and I'll get back to you in 24 hours. I just want to make sure this is the right decision. Yeah, no, that's totally fine, man. Just help me understand because I might be able to help you sort through this. Like, what were the main things you wanted to think over? It's just a lot of money and I want to run it by my wife, right? Okay, boom, I'm gonna go for the money objection. Yeah, I got you, man. And is it more like the price or just making sure that the program is the right fit for you? It's really just the price. Got it. With that said, just in terms of the program as a whole, do you feel like this will actually solve the problem that you were telling me about? Yes. Why? Because this, and this. Okay, cool. Would it be helpful if we can find a way to split that up so that you can, get started and make that transition, right? You get that buy-in from them. Once I've had that buy-in, I have the green light to basically push as hard as I need to get them to close on that call, right? They told me they think it's the right fit. So now it's my job to just get them across the line, whether it's logistical or it's fear. So that buy-in at the end is huge. Bridger, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, the temp check, the buy-in. You want to try to flush out any uncertainty or anything about the program or product that couldn't work, that maybe they don't think will fit for them, that isn't a fit. Like you want to really flesh all that out beforehand, because if you do it after the price drop, they're really not focused on the value of the product anymore. They're focused on the price. So it's very hard to do both. So that's all I would say.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point too. But anyways, this is the breakdown. These are what you're getting out of your discovery, right? Any sort of discovery you're doing, like, yeah, you might need some logistical stuff with B2B funding. Like a lot of people I talk to just can't get funded for what they're looking for, right? So I need to ask those questions too. But I'm never going to pitch until I've got all these data points, right? Because if they haven't shared it with me, then they haven't really realized it themselves, and I know they're not going to close. Just to dive into kind of some specifics here, for the discovery process, there are a few little tidbits I threw in as just sort of things to remember. So always start broad and then get more personal, right? If someone hops on, I'm like, cool, man. So like, let's say it's B2B funding. I'm like, cool, man. So go ahead and just fill me in. Like for each of your personal bank accounts, like how much do you have sitting in those right now? Right? They're gonna be like, what the fuck? And then like hang up on me. But I do ask that question because it makes sense in context, but I start broad, right? What are you looking for the funding to do? Cool. Okay. And what have you tried in terms of being able to scale the business? What have you tried in terms of getting funding? Okay. What's kept you from actually getting approved for the funding you need? Okay, cool. Is it all right if I dive into a little bit of the specifics of your situation? Cool. And then I can ask those questions, right? I've built that rapport first. So always start broad and then get more personal. The reason that also works is because people desensitize to questions as you keep asking them. One, it makes more sense, right? But two, if you've asked 10 questions, they're not good. Like the 11th can be pretty damn personal, and they're just like already answered 10. They're going to answer the 11th, right? Like they're not going to push back 11 questions in. They start to desensitize to opening up to you. Next thing is just know that you're entitled to know this stuff, right? You have to have that mindset going into it. If you feel weird asking the question, they're going to feel weird answering it, right? So when you ask those questions, know that this is something that you deserve to know, something that you need to know, and it's really helpful to justify in your mind beforehand why you need to ask it, right? The reason I do this is because it shows in your tonality. So for example, the consequence question, that's one a lot of people struggle to ask. They're like, why do I need to ask, like, what happens if they don't solve this? Well, what I do is I'm like, well, because for this person to succeed in a program, they need to be motivated. And who's more motivated? The person that's running towards like an ice cream cone, or the person running out of a burning building? Person running out of a burning building, right? Because they're scared of what's fucking behind them, right? They don't want to have that bad thing happen, right? So I am completely justified in my mind to ask you that question because I need to make sure that you've got the motivation to succeed. And if I don't think you do, then I'm not going to sell you into the program because I wouldn't be helping you, right? So it's completely justified in my mind. And it also means that if someone does by some chance push back, they almost never do because it shows in your tonality. You feel like you deserve to ask that question. But if they do push back, I can justify it by framing it, right? I can use that ice cream and burning building example if I need to. Last thing, with your discovery, is a little bit more advanced, so don't worry about this until you've really nailed down your discovery. But I really like to seed hooks and frames during the discovery process to set myself up for objection handling. So, for example, if I'm talking to a business owner who wants me to build out a sales process for them, I'm going to sell them on me building out their sales process. In the context of conversation, I'll be like, yeah. Maybe I say, like, what's one of the main objections you've been getting? This one. Got it. And so one of the things I often see is you need to have congruence between speech and action as a business owner. Would you agree? Yeah, I would agree. Cool. Then let's say we get to the end. They're telling me I need to think about it a bunch. They're like, all right, David, this sounds good. I just need to think about it. Cool, man. Now I've set up that hook, which now I can take that frame and go against that. And I'm like, remember how we talked about the sort of congruence with speech and action thing? How many deals do you think you've lost this last month? Do I need to think about it? This, 20 deals. Cool. And do you think that maybe the fact that you have this objection in your mind and you think it's a reasonable objection at the end of a sales call, that may be part of the reason it's coming up with your prospects? Yeah, I guess that is reasonable. So do you want that objection to continue to pop up on your calls? Well, no, I don't. Cool. And now I've basically set up a hook earlier in the call that I can create a frame around to objection handle at the end. So this is kind of the last thing I want to add. It's like, as you do your discovery, you can set yourself up to make later parts of the call easier. Outside of just getting the information you need, you can also start to see different perspectives in their mind that they need to have for them to succeed. Or another example is like, let's say they're like, yeah, I just don't know why people aren't buying my stuff. It's like this stuff works really well with like a sales, like if your offer is related to sales, right? Because then you can close at like 90% on salespeople because you can really be straightforward, right? But like, let's say they're like, yeah, they just don't see the value, and it's like, yeah, it really is important to be able to show your prospects the difference between cost versus an investment. They're like, yeah, exactly, right? You get to the end of the call, wow, this is really expensive, right? You can go back to the cost versus investment thing, right? So this is just a cool little thing you can start adding into your discovery as you get really good. This is the discovery process I follow. I do overarching outcome, right? The what. Then I go into situation. What are they doing to get to their goal now? Then I go into what's actually kept them from being able to, get to their goal. Like what's the actual barrier that's kept them stuck in this bad situation? Then I go through solutions that they're aware of, what fixing this would result in. And then I do consequence, and then I get buy-in that they feel like now is the right time, right? What would happen if you don't solve this, and this? All right, then with that said, do you feel like now is a good time to start making this change? Yes, I do. Why? Well, because if I don't make a change now, when will I? Cool. I've solved the urgency thing at the end, right? So this is my discovery process I follow. I can always dive more in depth into that, but that's the gist of the presentation. I'll drop the doc in the Zoom chat for you guys so you can look at it and kind of I would print it out and be able to write on it while you take calls because that's what I do. And it's pretty helpful. Cool. Was that
I
helpful
like
for
it.
you guys?
Let's take some questions and maybe do some takeaways, guys. What kind of questions do you guys have? What questions do you
Yeah, just raise your hand and I'll kind of answer them one at a time. It doesn't even have to be related to that. It can be like, hey, I've had this pop up a bunch on my calls. How do I solve this? Or how do I,
Totally. We can do
hey,
a
how
call
do I,
review as well.
yeah, or like, how do I increase commissions without getting better at sales? Like, whatever you want to ask, right? Yeah. What's up, Christian?
So you were talking a lot about like how the consequence that you have to have like a reason in your mind for asking that.
Yeah.
If they were to say, hey, like why are you but you said usually they don't because of tonality. Like let's say you were to mess up the tonality or even like it didn't work and they asked like why are you asking that? Like what would your response be in that situation?
Yeah, what I would be, well, it depends on the context of the sale, right?
Yeah, of course.
But if it's a biz op sale, I frame it around motivation, right? If it's something that's like they're making a transformation and they're required to do something, it's around them needing the proper motivation. So if they're like, why do you need to know that? I'd be like, well, let me ask you a question. Who do you think is going to be more motivated, right? Someone, running towards an ice cream cone, right? A fat kid, right? It's a hot sunny day. They see the ice cream truck and they're like, oh, there's some ice cream. You think that kid running to the ice cream truck is going to run faster, or the person that's running out of a burning building? Pretty much everybody's like the person running out of a burning building. I'm like, why? Well, because they don't want to be burned up and die. I'm like, yeah, the consequence is a little bit more motivating than the potential upside of getting some ice cream, right? They're like, yeah, cool. Same thing applies here, right? The people that succeed with this program are the people that actually know why they need to do this and have the motivation to push through stuff when it gets hard. Because I can guarantee you there are going to be periods where you want to quit. But if you understand and have a strong sense of why you're doing this, then you're going to be that person that succeeds and you're going to be one of our top case studies and you're the type of person I want in this program. So with that said, man, like, I know it's not fun, but let's go through this together. Like what would happen if, and then you go back in. That's how I would basically kind of reframe that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. And with like a more B2B sale, like with the funding, if it's like a business owner, I always frame it as like, cool, man. And I actually run a couple of businesses. So this is something I'm sure you've thought through because you kind of have to weigh your decisions. But I am curious, like, what would happen, like, in terms of the structure of the business and where things are going to go if, and then I ask the consequence question, right? They almost never have an issue with that. All right, Fisher, what's up?
How long did it take you to get from 0 to 10K a month? Like well, my question is how many different offers were you on before you got to a consistent 10K a month?
I hit 12K my first month in my agency. I actually started running an agency instead of closing. So it was a little bit different. It wasn't all profit because it was an agency. So it's not the same as straight commission. But by the time I did my first closing offer, I hit 10K. It was sort of a situation though of like I I had already understood sales when I started closing, and I was also kind of like a pretty natural closer. I think I spent a lot of time with my friends in high school. I talked to a lot of people. I was always pretty good at like communicating, and so that played to my strengths. What I will say though is if you are struggling in the beginning, what ends up happening and what I'll end up seeing is the people that start bad end up being the best. And the reason is that the entire sort of world of sales, it is a structure, right? It's a science, right? And so if you start bad, you have to get really, really good at two things. One, maximizing your time, right? If you're shit at sales and your close rate is bad, guess what you're going to do? You're going to start calling leads in your time off so that you can eat that month, right? Like you need to start to be very productive and go for volume and be able to maximize your time so that you can close as many deals as possible, even though you're not good at sales, right? So you get really, really good in terms of following up with people, calling no shows, kind of hunting for deals basically. And then when you get good, because you're going to realize, well, shit, now I need to study, and you start to practice and you really dive into it, and you actually get technically talented and you become as good as someone that's naturally good, well, guess what? You've got this boost of, already being able to maximize your time. So now you're not lazy. You've got the skill set and you're really good at maximizing your time. And those people generally outperform just someone that's like naturally talented. Does that make sense?
So did you start off closing? You didn't start off setting?
No, I basically was running my agency and I was very good at sales with my agency. And so then people in my agency coaching program, like the program I was in, it was Agency Lab, started reaching out and were like, hey, can you close deals for my agency? And so I started closing for them. Yeah, it was kind of a weird situation, but I highly recommend you start with sales instead of running an agency because there's way more stuff I had to learn. I don't know if you've watched my podcast with Bridger, but I mentioned that. Yeah, what else do you guys have? Bridger, you want to go through some topics together? We can. Oh, Sid, what's up,
Yeah.
man?
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I got a question. So I remember when I spoke to you last, you mentioned you were in college and you were taking calls in between classes and everything. So I was wondering, because I'm in a same situation right now. I'm
Mhm.
taking calls in between classes and everything. Like, how did you manage your time?
Yeah, it can be tricky.
Yeah,
I got AirPods Max because these things have like they're really good in terms of like wind,
right.
and their voice cancellation. And I like voice isolation on my iPhone. And I basically everything was by phone, so it was just like I'd be walking to a class and I'd be taking calls, and I'd also like even when I had weird time blocks, so I had a class start at like 10:20 and end at 11:10. I would take a call from 10, even if it was 30-minute time blocks for my sales, I'd take the call from 10 to 10:20. So I get a call in there, and then I would text the person from 11:10 to 11:30 time slot and say, "Hey man, I'm just finishing up a meeting with someone that we onboarded and we got funded. I'll be 10 minutes late, right?" So I made that text say, like talk about how one of our clients was already successful, right? Oh, we just got someone funded, so I just need to help them like liquidate the funds or whatever.
Right.
I'll be 10 minutes late. And
Mhm.
so I lost one 30-minute time block for like a 50-minute class. So that's how I structured it.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah. It's a weird situation, but I guess I'm the right person to ask. Um, yeah. All right. What else do you guys have? How do you all feel you're doing with your discovery? Do you guys feel like pretty good with the way you're asking questions? Maybe you guys can just like kind of throw out some things you maybe feel like, oh, everybody feels like a type A prospect, like they're resistant to answering my questions. How do I not come across salesy? Like anything like that. I know like a lot of those are common problems for salespeople, but any of those sound familiar?
Did you guys think about when I've pulled up calls? Let's just think about what you're going to run into. If you don't have problems right now, you're going to. And so it's all about getting 5 chess moves ahead. So like, for example, how are you going to handle the most 5 common objections? I need to think about it. It's too much money, or money finance objection. I want to go talk to your competitors. I want to go shop around. Like, how are you going to handle these things? And so what would you say for you, David? Because I mean, you're closing at least, 1, 2, 3 deals a day. What's the most common objection you're getting, or the top 2 or 3, and how are you overcoming those right now?
Good question. So part of this is because I can say what I get, and this is something important. Track your numbers, right? You should be tracking like what objections you're getting. Um, Most common objection I'll get is in the funding space is something along the lines of like, why can't I do this myself? A lot of people will come on thinking that they're talking to a bank to get access to like a loan, and the offer is a service to it's kind of like a CPA, right? Someone that's good at this stuff, right? You pay someone to do your taxes for you, save you a little bit of money. With this offer, it's like you pay someone to structure your credit profile and get you approved for more funding. That's probably like the most common one I get. It's like, is that the way I handle that is it's by reframing their thinking around it. So I'm like, I basically go in like, well, let me ask you, like, just help me understand this. how long have you been running the business again? Like 5 years. Cool. And have you been able to access any lines of credit up until this point? Most of the time it's no. If they have been, I'll ask, aside from XYZ, have you been able to access any lines of credit? No. And why do you think that is? I don't know. It's like, exactly. The problem is that funding is actually a pretty complicated space. Sort of like doing your taxes, right? So, and then I'll use the CPA example, reframe their thinking around it from like, why can't I just go get this myself, to thinking, oh, I'm going to have an expert take care of this for me because my time is valuable. And then I'm like, so with that said, do you feel like being able to get access to this, being able to scale your business and having that in place going forward would be worth the 5K, 10K investment? And most of the time they're like, yes. And then if they're like, no, then we go into like the money side, and you can do logistical and then fear-based objections. But it's kind of a weird one for my offer. It's like very much just like a reframe thing. I'd say most people, probably the most common objection people are getting is like, I need to think about it, right? So I'll go through how I view objections. I view objections as basically one of two things: logistical or fear-based, right? So I need to think about it is always a smokescreen, right? You guys know this if you've gone through the program. And so you need to cut through that and figure out what is it they want to think about, right? So, for example, I need to think about it. Cool, man, that's totally fine. And I honestly think that makes sense. I guess let me ask you, and then I'll be like, what specifically are you wanting to think over, so I can maybe help clarify a few things. I'll put it in context of the conversation, right? And I'll be like, they'll then either have a flurry of objections or one thing. They'll either be like, yeah, I mean, I just want to make sure this is the right thing for me. It's a lot of money. I want to go back to my wife, right? They just hit you with like 3 objections. I always pick money first because that's the one that I feel like is the easiest to handle. But then with money, I go through logistical and like I get buy-in. Hey, that money aside, do you feel like this is like actually going to get you to your goal? Yes. Why? Because this, and this. Make them think about it. Cool. Would it be helpful if I could find a way to split up the payments for you? Right? They're like, yes. Do a split pay. If it's like legitimately just like cash on hand, then if they can't do that, right? That's still not doing the trick. Then I know it's a fear-based money objection, right? They're just scared to invest it. It's not that they can't, right? You can even do an open wallet test, before you do a split pay if you want to. I don't, just for times purposes, because I have calls stacked back to back. But then I'll go into a fear reframe, right? If they're scared to invest the money, then I know I just need to reframe their way they think about making decisions as a whole, right? To make them realize it's an investment. So I really like to use like analogies. So I have an analogy. I'm like, look, so first off, I'll be like, look, I understand this is scary. It's all right if I kind of give you an example. And then I'll go through an island analogy where I'm like, look, you don't know. You make decisions based off of your perspective, right? And until you make the decision and make the change to get a new perspective, you're never going to be able to have that proper perspective that you want to have, right? So with that said, the hardest part is taking that first step and moving towards it. But like, I'll hold your hand every step of the way and make sure that you get there, right? It's just reframing their thinking about it. And I do that for I need to think about it as well. That's just a straight fear one. You just reframe their way of making decisions. Hey, are you completely happy with where that decision making model has gotten you up until this point? No, I'm not. Why do you say that? Well, because I'm making 3K a month with my 9-to-5 job. Cool. Then do you think that continuing to make decisions like that, as you have been for the last 6 years, which has gotten you in this position, is going to get you out of this position? Well, probably not. Cool. Then are you open to trust me here and actually take a chance on making this change and making that difference so you can get to XYZ goal? And I'll be generally like, yeah. And then with the partner one, that's the kind of the trickiest one to deal with, because I'm like, what do you think they would say if they were here? They're like, I think they'd probably say, whatever they're going to say. I'm like, why do you say that? Well, because this, and this. Cool. And if your partner, if you didn't have a partner, what would you say? If your partner was saying yes, like, what would you say? They're like, well, I like it. Cool. What do you like about it? This, and this. Cool. What if your partner said no? Then they're like, well, I wouldn't do it. Then I know it's logistical, and I'm like, all right, I get them booked in for a second call with the partner. If they're like, I do it anyways, I'm like, why? And they're like, this, and this. And then I'll I'll generally be like, here's how I would bring it up to your partner. What I normally do from here is get a deposit in. It's fully refundable if you go talk to your partner and they don't want to do it. But this just is because you're ready to rock and show some commitment, and I can get you in the program. Sound fair? And most people will move forward at that point. So that's kind of a speed run of my objection handling frameworks and processes.
So guys, what would you say for you was the most? Oh yeah, we got a question, Christian.
Yeah, Christian, what's up?
Yeah, what do you like? So if a prospect asks before, it's like before you drop the price, like how do you personally handle the how much does it cost question?
Like if they're like asking while I'm doing discovery.
Yeah, if they're asking what you're just like you go over, yeah, and you're like, yeah, I just want to know how much this costs.
Yeah, so that really doesn't happen to me anymore because that's like sort of a thing where you're like not in control of the sale. But when that did happen, the way I'd always handle this, I'd be like, yeah, man, I'll be getting right into that. But what might be a little bit more appropriate now is I don't really know exactly what service you need or how I could really even help you at this point. So let me ask you, and then I'll go right back into it, right? So I'm like, I'll be like, hold that thought, basically. But I just want to understand this, and then you go right back for it. You can't just like ignore it because that's like you come across autistic, but like you also I don't want to I don't want to like just I don't know I don't want to like just fold, right? And you kind of lose some leverage after you drop price. I personally don't think I think Bridger and I might have slightly different perspectives on this. I don't think dropping price loses all the leverage. Some closers are like, you have no leverage after you drop price. That's not been my experience, but I will say I don't want to drop price until towards the end of the call because I need them to be able to attach value to it, right? And if you're a setter, what I would do is I'd be like, yeah, that's something that actually Ryan will go through with you, like whoever you're setting them to. Just because we have different packages and different options, and he's the expert here. And so what he's going to do is go over the information I've kind of gotten from you, pick out a plan that makes the most sense, and then walk you through that, and he'll be able to give you all those details, right? That's how I'd handle it if like you were setting for a closer.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely.
Epic. Parsa, you're taking some closed calls. What kind of questions do you have? What are you running into? Let's talk about show rate. Parsa's been having trouble with B2B or B2C show rate. Talk to me about some of your favorite tactics, strategies before the call to get show rate to increase.
Yeah. I'm under the belief that as a closer, like you should be calling every person pretty much as soon as they book in. Now, if it's from a setter and that's a show rate issue, that's a problem the setter's having, right? The setter needs to improve that.
What if it's paid traffic?
If it's paid traffic, I call as soon as they book. So I literally have this on my phone. I get a notification as soon as someone books in. If I'm free, I call them right away. And I'm always like, hey, is this Ryan? Yep. Hey Ryan, this is David. I'm with XYZ company. I saw you booked in with me yesterday. I just wanted to call real quick and see if there's anything I could send over before the call or any way I could be helpful, blah, blah, blah. Or another way you can do it is like, I just wanted to get 2 quick data points before we had that call tomorrow. Did I catch you at a bad time? And then I kind of frame me calling them as like, either I need something from them or can I send over some examples or case studies or whatever. And then at the end, I'm like, cool. And I just want to confirm, 11:30 is what I see you booked down for tomorrow. That time's going to work for you. You're going to be good for that. Yes. And then after they've made that like human connection, you're no longer just like a number on a calendar. Like you're a person and
Right.
your show rate goes way up. So I always do that. And then if they don't pick up, then I send them a text saying, hey, just wanted to check in about this and this. Let me know if you have a minute tonight. And then morning of, I also text everybody to confirm. I text them an hour before if they still haven't responded. And then if they haven't responded an hour, like 3 hours before, I'll actually open up that time slot so someone can book in. This is for my offer. I've got a huge amount of leads. It's like first, like the 30-minute calls, there's no set for it. So it's like they're very, very cold. So there's a decent no-show rate. So I'll actually open up that time slot so someone can book in if they need to. And then, they're my like secondary option if a new person books in, essentially.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, that's how I structure it. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Also, in any sort of hours you're not selling, like you should have a block where you're selling. You should not touch your leads or contact anybody after that block. But in that block, you should have no time where you're not dialing or texting leads and like trying to get people on the phone. Like for example, yesterday, I had like a relatively bad sales day in the sense of like just a lot of people that came on legitimately just couldn't get funded. They didn't have good enough like profiles. And so I was like, shit, this sucks. I had a 30-minute time block, someone no showed. And so then I set 4 appointments in that 30 minutes for today. And 2 of those closed. So
Parsa, go ahead.
yeah, and those were off of like no shows from earlier in the week. So that's
Yep.
20 grand for the company that would not have been collected
Right.
if I hadn't dialed those leads.
There you go, dude. Yo, Parsa, let me ask you this. How many outbound sets have you set for yourself?
Like 2, 3.
2 or 3? How many should
Yeah.
he be shooting for if he's getting, say, 60 leads a month and only, how many leads are we getting a month? 80?
I know. Let me look
Yeah.
at the
I think
tracking.
it's like 60 to 80, and then we're getting maybe like half of them to book, half of them don't book.
I'll just put it this way. Whenever I'm closing, probably like 30% of my commission comes off of sets for myself, off of no shows. Like my commission would be 30% lower if I wasn't doing it. So I would be making like with this offer like 9 to 15 grand less a month if I wasn't setting for myself. But yeah, and that's not including probably another 10% that comes from follow-ups and referrals, right? That's another thing I'm doing. After I've gone through my warm like no shows from the last couple of days, then I'm gonna do follow up on people that I like just talked to and didn't close. There's very few of those. No, I'm kidding. But I'll do like follow ups with those people, and then every single person I close, I set up a call 30 or 90 days from that initial call, depending on like the program's life cycle, to upsell them, right? It's a check-in call, but I upsell them, and you can make a ton of money off of upsells because it's way easier to close someone that already joined the program and got good results if you have a good program on a higher level program with the same people, right? They already trust you and they already got good results. So that's another thing you should be doing. You should be booking a call, like a check-in call with every single person you close so that you can upsell them in 30 or 90 days. So that might be happening to some of you soon. I don't know. But yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah, bro. Thank you.
That's like something that's hugely overlooked. A lot of people care a little bit too much about the skill set side, which is hugely important, obviously. But like, if you're doing things properly, like you should add an extra 40%. Like 40% of your total income should come from people you set for yourself, upsells, referrals, things like that. What's up, Fisher?
So this is actually really useful because follow-ups and stuff, I feel like that's pretty much the main thing that I need to focus on because I'm doing cold calling and my first week I set like 7 or probably 8 or 9 appointments and they all no-showed. And then the next week, I started off following up them, and so our offer is getting built up from the ground zero. So when I on the first day, I was just on a piece of paper taking down the time, and Walter was gonna call him on their phone. Then he's building up everything as we go. And right now, I'm calling them like an hour before. If they don't answer, I call them like 4 or 5 times. So what's the best follow up like step by step guide and how you would do it? So is it like call them in the morning, call them 3 hours before, text them? Like what's the follow up guide that you give?
Yeah, so if you're having a really bad show rate like that, that actually is more of like a just like refining the skill, right? Thinking if you're always gonna have somewhat
Yeah,
bad show
yeah.
rate.
The first week it was the first, but this next week the next week, so it's completely cold calling, and there's 50. It's a $50 show. Like if they show, it's $50 if they show. And so this last week, so far I've had 8 people show in the since last last Friday. So I've eight people show since last Friday. None of them closed, but the follow up, I'm just not sure on the exact follow up process on how to do it because on the Calendly when they book, it only sends them the follow-up emails if they confirm it. And a lot of the guys, like, they don't,
They don't.
some of them confirm, but like, is there a way to, like, fix that? Like, if they don't confirm it
You
and
can
the
set up
emails, like,
automation in your
yeah,
CRM. So that
yeah,
what you can do is what I would do if I were you is I'd write some follow-up emails and go like, because no marketer likes the closer that comes and says, hey, this is an issue, fix it. But if a closer comes and says, hey, I wrote 5 emails, can you put this in the CRM so it follows up with every person I set to try and improve show rate and rebooking rate? They'll be like, yeah, like sure, because you wrote the email, you went out of your way, right?
yeah,
So be like a problem solver in that sense. In terms
yeah.
of following up with people that don't show, I just call them like double dial once a day for the next week, and then once every like 3 days for the week after that, and then with cold calling, like at that point, just start ripping new dials and connecting with new people.
And should I call them? Should I call them like in the morning? Like, how many times is too annoying? You know what I mean? Like, how many
Yeah,
times too
I would
annoying
just
in one day?
double dial like
Yeah,
basically once a day is what I'd probably recommend. With cold calls, it may be slightly different, but I don't I double dial basically once a day on no shows, and then I focus the rest of my time on like other leads. Now, maybe slightly different with cold calling because like with me, it's like I've got people booked in, so I want to put
mhm,
the majority of my time into those people. With cold calling, if you have like a really bad like dial to interest rate, right? Like where 1 out of 100 people are interested, then I would, twice a day double dial. Once in the like sort of mid morning, once in the like before you call it a day, just because, you've got a pool of people at least showed some interest. Um,
yeah.
but
That helps. I kind of just need the follow up like blueprint because my follow ups I'm kind of doing like I'm calling them some like 3 hours before, some of them like 15 minutes before. I just need that process of follow up. And yeah, and the leads like they're off of Google, so they're not even in the CRM. And so a lot of times when I get callbacks, like it's just a number and I don't see their name, so it's tough. But I mean, it's good because I mean the $50 show up fee is pretty good. So I mean that's once I figure that out like on the page and doing everything, it's pretty good. So just the
okay,
follow ups I need.
got it, got it. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Cool. I got to run here, guys. I've got a
Same,
call actually in about
same.
5 minutes. But yeah. Any last things you guys want me to touch on, or are we pretty much good for now?
Dude, that was super helpful, super valuable. Let's give it up for the man, David. Woo! Dude, you dropped sauce, man. I appreciate you sharing that doc. Are you willing to share that, or did you already share that document?
Yeah, I dropped it in the chat.
Okay, let's copy that, guys. Let me copy that, drop that in the Discord. And then, guys, let's end with a little bridge the gap. You guys ready? All right, mic's on. Let's do it. We'll see you guys Monday. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Bridge the
Bridge the
gap.
gap.
All